I want to welcome you to the Charly Crawford podcast. Let's ride.
Hi, I'm Trevor Brazil.
My name's Corey Kuntz.
Hi, I'm Gina Nogueira.
I'm Luke Browne.
Hi, I'm Tyler Wade.
I'm Caleb Driggers. Miles Baker. Wesley Thorpe. Paul Eves. Patrick Smith. We ask so much out of our horses that recovery is crucial, and that's why I use Equinety.
I've been doing this a long time. What I have in common with these ropers is we all trust Equinety.
I feed Equinety because I want to give my horses any edge.
My horse. My horse.
My horse.
My horse.
All my horses have the Equinety edge.
What's up, Papa?
What's going on?
Man, good to have you out here, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Coming out from Cali, got a big week of roping this week.
Yes, sir.
This is right down your alley where it's, about 5 days in a row?
Yeah, I think I have 3 days in a row, but I'll
Yeah.
be here for 5. So
Yeah.
I was trying to get an extra pot today, but it just didn't happen.
Yeah. U.S. finals this week.
Mm-hmm.
You've been going a bunch of ropings out there in Arizona over the wintertime, man, and it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Yeah.
You know, man, there's some days I feel unstoppable, and then there's other days that I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is why I'm still a 3. You know what I mean?
So how long have you been roping?
Since November of 24.
So a little over a year?
A little over a year.
Yeah.
And that's when I started turning steers. And then like 2 months later, I went to my first jackpot and missed all my steers. And was so embarrassed. Like I walked in the box when it wasn't my turn. I didn't go in the box when it was my turn. I
do that all the time now, but I can't hear.
Yeah.
I'm just guessing when I'm up.
Man, and so I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Idiot. You know what I mean? Just, one of my steers, I threw the loop and it was like 2 feet to the left. And we get to the back and I'm looking at my healer and he's like, you know, just kind of
like on Major League when Ricky Vaughn was throwing them pitches and he's like, well, just a bit outside.
Yeah. It was like, and oh man. And so all of that, just like, I let myself like get, nervous then because I was like, oh, okay. You know, I entered 4 times. I was like, I'll catch 1 out of 4, you know? And I went home with my tail tucked between my legs.
So what got you started roping?
So actually we bought a ranch back in 2021. I went to a neighbor's branding out there and I was ground crew the entire time because I didn't know how to ride a horse.
I could see why they'd want you on the ground too.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because like the riders were like, we want him to handle our cattle because I would just
obvious reasons
grab them, hold them down. They're like, this is easy for us. You know what I mean? Like,
this is so familiar.
Yeah. There was one where a guy was bringing them by and it didn't have a heel loop on it, heel shot on it yet. And I just grabbed it and flipped it over, and one of the guys yelled at me.
Give it a front knee kick to slow it down.
Yeah. I just picked him up and threw him down. The healer was like, hey, don't take our steers. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, sorry, bud. I was just right here, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it was fun, you know, but.
Brandon's by far the coolest cowboy event.
Absolutely.
I think that there is.
Absolutely. And
so I can see how that could get a guy started.
Yeah. And so I was, like I said, I was ground crew the whole time. And I was like, I want to do what they're doing, you know? And so maybe like a year later or so, I was finally able to find a horse. And then I started with Sissy Barnes down there in Nuevo. And I was just learning how to like handle a rope. You know,
because you're living down there in Southern California.
I'm in our ranch is in Oregon, and we're living in Southern California. And so I mean, like I said, I hadn't ridden a horse, I hadn't held a rope, I didn't know what anything was at that time, and so it was big learning curve. So I did that for like probably close to like a year, and and that's all I wanted to do. I had no desire to team rope. I like people.
So you was learning to ride.
Yeah, I just wanted to learn how to ride and how to brand, because to me that was a utility that I needed for owning the ranch, right? And so that's what I wanted to learn. And the more I got into that, the more I wanted to ride my horse and go and do stuff with my horse, not just trail ride. Like, I'll go on a trail ride here and there. You know, if I go with my wife, great, or, you know, something like that, I'll absolutely. But I don't like to go out and trail ride. Like, I want to be doing something.
Need some competitiveness.
Yeah, I just like need a direction. I feel, you know, like when I'm riding a horse and stuff like that, it's like, again, every once in a while I don't mind, and it's usually because my horse needs it, because I've been roping on him so much that he needs just to relax and just go do horse things, and we can go for a nice easy ride and calms him down, and you know, he's not all getting all hot and ready, you know, and stuff like that. So but so that's what kind of led me into team roping. And so then in 24, I was talking with Sissy, and you know, she was like, you should try to, you know, team rope, you know, and so there were a couple of times that there were actually some breakaway ropers that came over, and like at the end of my practice with her, because I would go in the mornings because I'm retired and I can do it at any time, and she had mornings open. So some mid mornings she would have some breakaway ropers come, and they're, you know, between the ages of like 10 and 16, you know, and they're girls. And so I'm sitting there at the end of my practice, where I was just literally, we had a heifer called Disappointment, or she did, called Disappointment, who would literally just walk, and you'd have to like kick up and maybe smack her with the rope or something to get her to do a little trot, you know? So it was like the perfect learning steer.
It's
you
a
know?
great name.
Yeah, Disappointment. Yeah. and so that was my speed, right? It was like just a nice easy trot, and you know, throw a heel loop, throw a head loop, whatever, and that was it. And so then I seen them one day, and I wasn't quite finished yet, so I'm cooling off my horse, and I'm just sitting there watching them, and they're leaving out of the box, and they're like, "Oh, you can go if you want." I'm like, "I'm not that good. I'm gonna fall off my horse." Like, I've never been out of really a trot, you know what I mean? And when I'm in the lope, I'm focused, you know what I mean? It's not just like I get a walk, trot, lope, and you know, just like it's no big deal. You know, I have to focus on it because I'm new to it. And so you know, I'm sitting there on the sidelines with like 10-year-old girls, 16-year-old girls leaving out of the box, and I'm like, oh man, you know, that's pretty cool. And so one day I got the nerve, and honestly, so in the beginning I was actually scared of horses. When I was young, I did like some riding lessons a little bit, and the lope, I couldn't do it. Like, I was scared. And then also when I was younger, I almost got ran over by a horse when I was out playing with some friends. Like, a horse got loose and came up the orchard, and I came around a tree, and I stopped, and there's this big gray horse about to run me over. So I dive out of the way, and I was scared of horses. So
you kind of have that carrying over.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the horse I bought didn't help at all. You know what I mean? So that he was like a $14,000 horse at an auction sale. You know what I mean? So it was like not ideal. But actually, I know, looking back now, and I know myself, when I put myself in certain situations, that's when I rise to those occasions, right? And it's very similar to recently going and trying a horse at Trevor and Miles' place, and I ended up getting it because it's a lot of horse, you know. And I was I went back to day one when I went there, and I was scared out of my mind because I'm trying to warm this horse up, and it's just like out of my league, you know what I mean? But so anyway, so talking about Jugs, he was a little, he was a little hot, and he had bucked me off a few times.
So
and,
this is a horse you're getting started with. This
Yeah.
bucking you off.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and it was my
that's a rough way to start. That's
Yeah.
not going to give a guy a lot of confidence.
well, I'll tell you though, the thing is all my doing. It wasn't like I would be sitting on him and then he would just go to bucking. It would be something that I did. Like one time I remember I went down, and I used to have a saddle where the stirrups weren't turned. So I had to like reach down, and cause if you started messing with your foot and jabbing him with your toe or something, he would start flinching, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I'd reach down, and one time I remember I kind of slipped, and I poked him right in the side of my thumb, and he just came unglued. You know, he started circling, and I'm holding on to the thing, and he's circling this and that, and then he bucks me off, and then he goes bucking through on my property, breaking hose bibs and doing all this stuff. I'm like, rip my saddle, rip the seat on my saddle. I was like, oh man, And so I remember, because I had a guy, Leonard Davis, help me with him. And I remember when I got him back, because I had to go out of town for like 3-4 weeks. When I got him back, I went to get on him, and he kept backing up, and he would snort. He was like a snorty horse. And I remember one time I videoed it, and I was like, Leonard, what do I do? And he's like, just get on the damn horse. He's like, he's broke, but you're scared. I was like, Leonard, are you telling me to stop being a bitch? He's like, absolutely. Get on the horse and just ride. And I was like, all right. So I got on the horse and I rode, and then after that, it's really funny, because after he said that to me, I was like, just get on the horse. Like, what's the word? Like, you'll get bucked off. Okay, you've already been bucked off. You're fine. You know what I mean? So I got on the horse, and since then I've been a lot more confident. But there's still situations and horses and stuff like that put a healthy amount of fear.
Yeah, because I would say that, like, when we have Journey on horses and Creed on horses, like, there is, like, they are like a bat and a bomb to go off to get them to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, that's, as a guy's getting started, there's so much of that has to be mindful for, because, man, when a guy's not sure what he's doing, the last thing you want is something that, knows how to get away from stuff or creates that. And so, that's one of the things that we really, really try to make sure of anyone getting started. Like, we've got to find that 18, 19, 20 some odd year horse, 20-year-old horse that, like, literally anytime you let off is just going to do this at all times, because it's got so much experience that can help with the inexperienced rider getting that confidence level. But man, when a guy's got a little bit almost of a troubled horse, and if they're snorting at all, that's not going to give a guy much confidence. So
No, but
one thing about it, at least you overcame it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Is like, fear isn't real unless you give into it. You know what I mean? And you can't be brave without fear. And so to me, I went through those little battles when I was learning how to ride. Just getting on them at times was enough for me, where I'm like, all right, I'm doing good. You know what I mean? I didn't get bucked off today, and stuff like that. And so, it is what it's that's the direction I.
When did you start seeing team roping? When did that start kind of taking place?
So, so after a little bit, going a couple of times after breakaway ropers came and would leave out of the box, and I felt like shameful. You know what I mean? That, you have a 40-year-old man sitting here not wanting to leave out of the box. I was like, hey, try to buck up. You know what I mean? Like, suck it up. And so, I mean, the first time I didn't even have a rope in my hand. It was on that same horse, this horse called Jugs. And I just held on to the saddle horn, and when I put him in the box, I mean, he reared up a couple times. You know what I mean? I was like, oh man. And it wasn't too bad though. It was like it wasn't like he stood straight up, right? It wasn't like that. He like kind of bounced a little bit and would like get excited. Yeah. I'm like, holy shit, I'm gonna go for a ride right now. And so I'll just hold on to that, onto my horn, and when the gate would open, he would just go. And after the first time of that happening, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. You know, you can go fast on these
Get
guys.
some adrenaline.
Yeah,
Some
a little
adrenaline
bit.
popped out.
Absolutely. And then I got to a point where I could have a rope in my hand. I'll still hold on to the horn, and then finally I started swinging, and that whole progression that people go through. I just, instead of at 10, I did it at 40. But that's when it started.
When did you? What do you think hooked you? Was probably the adrenaline. What do you think it was?
I think that was part of it. I think the part that's really got me hooked is just how difficult it is, how simple it is, but how complex and difficult it is, because simplicity isn't always easy. Like, there's so many things, from walking into the box to when you turn and face. There's a million things going on and a million different variables that can happen. And so it's like every run is different. And that's really what has me hooked, is that it's so different every run.
This episode is brought to you by Ambrook. Running a ranch today means managing far more than cows. You're balancing multiple enterprises, family partners, land bases, leases, inventory, equipment, and markets that move fast. But if your books and inventories live in the checkbook, spreadsheets, or buried inside QuickBooks, you're always reacting instead of steering the business. Ambrook gives ranchers real managerial insight, not just bookkeeping. See profitability by enterprise or location. Know whether hay is paying for itself, whether stockers outperform cow-calf this year, or whether that rented pasture is worth keeping. Your balance sheet updates automatically, and with ag-specific inventory management, you always know exactly what feed, inputs, and livestocks you have on hand and what they're costing you. Tag receipts from the feed store, reconcile from the tractor, and eliminate year-end scramble. Ranchers save up to 90% of bookkeeping time and finally get numbers they can trust for family meetings, lenders, and major expansion decisions. Ambrook is built for ranching complexity, not generic small business accounting. Try it free for a month at ambrook.com/Crawford. That's AMBROOK.com/Crawford.
Yeah, because you think of basketball. There's so many different shots in basketball, but the rim's always the same. Conditions are always the same. When you think about a steer, who knows when he's going to step left, step right, slow down. Then you got the wind. Then you got all these different variables. And so not every shot's quite the same. And that's what I've seen with the military guys that come into with the event that I put on, and where a lot of them guys loved it was just that feel of when the back of the box to the steer, where they get that adrenaline, the competition, camaraderie amongst other guys, and just being able to compete and, talk crap again. And, so that's what I've seen a lot of guys that have enjoyed coming into this industry, is you kind of get that feeling back, and it's not as hard on your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The competitive nature is also is a big driver for me. Believe me, I need to be competitive at something. And, so that's a big driver, but I've just gotten to the point where I'm comfortable talking a little shit, even though most of the time I lose, you know what I mean? Like, we're in Arizona, and I had this guy out there, Jason James, he's like, hey, Travis, he's like, the next, whoever does the next run faster gets $100. I was like, game on, So he goes out, and I think, he's probably like, I think he maybe his header broke a barrier, so he was like 15. I was like, oh, dude, I'm gonna smoke you. You know what I mean? I got
this one in the bag.
You better have my $100, And I go out there and miss, and I'm like, oh. You know what I mean? Or like, we're actually at a Rich Skelton clinic, and there's this kid out there named Bryce Finch, and it was so funny because all the headers went, and Bryce was the last to go, and he's like, okay, you got to work on this, and this, and you have to work on this, and this, and goes down the whole line. There's like 8 or 9 or 10 of us. And then he gets to Bryce, and he goes, well, Bryce, that was a really good run. And so I'm sitting there like, oh, what is this? What would Bryce do? WWBD? Like, what's this shit? You know what I mean? You suck up, Bryce, you know? And so then we just started jawing back and forth. And then at the end of the clinic, we did a little jackpot, you know. And it was so funny. Like, I was just mouthing off to him, and he's like, watch this. And he goes out there and he just smokes a steer. I was like, oh, great. And I was next. And I go out and I don't know what I did, but it wasn't that good. You know what I mean? I might have missed or something like that. So, but it's fun getting the trash talking back and forth, you know. Yeah. No,
So
it's
once you started kind of throwing some loops, getting comfortable, then obviously now you're finding places to go rope.
Mhm.
Then you're able to enter your first jackpot. Kind of talk a little bit of that transition of kind of where you started feeling that bug that really got you, and kind of when was it?
Yeah, I mean, when I missed all 4 steers on my first jackpot, that was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna do this again. You know, because I knew I wasn't that bad. You know, I had never been. That was my first jackpot ever, and it was so funny. The week leading up to it, I was like, hey, sissy, I know you don't team rope anymore, but would you go with me? You know what I mean? Because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to sign up. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what a draw is. I don't know what a pick
Help
is.
me understand the lingo. Help me understand where the play is. Where do we get started?
Absolutely.
And because there's no manual on that.
No, nothing. And people usually either grow up doing it or they've had buddies doing it. They've gone a couple times. I had literally never
You're
been to
new
one.
to this and don't know anyone.
Yeah.
In it.
Yeah. I'm like, treat me like I'm a 5-year-old kid, you know? And so she was like, all right, I'll go in there a couple times, just, you know, kind of walk you through it. And so she went and held my hand, you know, and watched me miss all 4 steers. And I was like, oh man, get back to the drawing board. But yeah. And then, the cool thing is that that motivated me. So I went back to sissies and I was just roping nonstop or as often as I could at the time with one horse, you know, and not blowing them up. And so about a month later, we had another bigger jackpot around us, and I went and I think I placed like 6th or something. That's when I won like $400, and I came home. I'm like, babe, $400 cost me $600 today, but I made $400. You know,
got the money.
Yeah,
got in the short round.
And I'm like, we're gonna get a trailer. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. She's like, good job with your $400, babe. So we were just laughing, you know, laughing at me about it, which is totally fine. We have fun with it. But man, that, like, when I missed all those 4 steers, I knew that I wanted to get good at it.
Yeah. Well, then you started getting some more horses I'd seen, because it looked like you had the gray, and then when I went down over there, you had the buckskin, and so you're kind of starting now finding other horses to get more runs and more reps in, it looked like.
Absolutely, yeah. So last September, my dark bay actually ended up getting a weird, like, bacterial infection or something, and he lost an eye, and I was just like, I'm not horseman enough to ride that horse. So, you know, that was the one that bucked me off and had issues anyways. So I sent him to my buddy in Hawaii that knows how to ride and has been doing it his whole life, and he actually used them to go rope some wild cattle on the Mauna Kea and stuff like that. So but yeah, so I got my buckskin, and then I got my gray about 2 months later. That was last, like, October. Got my buckskin in September, and that was a game changer. When I got my buckskin, he's a really good horse, and they were making the rounds with the lady that was selling them, Mackenzie, making the rounds. So she went down to San Diego to some open guys, and I guess they passed on him because they said that he doesn't duck quick enough for him, you know. And I was like, perfect.
Which is not what you're looking for.
Yeah,
So
I was like, perfect.
good.
Yeah. I'll, you know, let me try him. And so I went and tried him, and that was really like the second horse I ever rode. And I was able to go out and catch like 3 or 4 steers out of. I think I missed 1 or 2. Right.
Well, talk a little bit about the difference too. Like, once you have one that's kind of what that first one was like, but then when you have one that get on that understands the job.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like when I watched him, he went when you wanted to. He went to the spot.
Yeah.
He turned off when you asked him to. So you're talking about something now that's kind of helping you now learn how to rope, because there's something to being able to get on something that already knows his job, so you can just kind of think about roping. But
absolutely,
you're trying to think about riding and roping, and you're all getting started. I mean, you're going to learn
It's a mess.
twice as much, but you're going to be 6 times more frustrated, through that process. To be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
now find something that's on your team to be able to go get reps on.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's when I started kind of seeing on Instagram and, as I've been following you along, where you kind of start seeing now some confidence getting showed up where you're able to go rope.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I had a Palomino too, and he was worse off than my bay, right? And so I was like, well, I have this horse, but he's sitting up at my ranch, not getting work done, or anything. So I brought him back down, and I was like, yeah, I'll rope him my bay, but then I'll kind of like try to really work with my Palomino, try to get him used to the box, and he hadn't really turned steers or nothing. And so that, having that Palomino and trying to work with him made me really understand that I don't want to train horses, that I want to go and I want to buy a finished horse
and go rope.
Mm-hmm. That's what I love doing. I love roping. I don't like training horses. I don't mind like working on little things. Like there's times where like I'm a little heavy-handed, and I know I am. Like especially when I'm back in the box, I'll get on them just a little bit too much, and so sometimes my horse will kick their hip out or something. And so I've had to like fix that with my buckskin and stuff like that, right? So it's like, but that's me learning how to.
Well, and I think too is what every roper needs to understand too is the more reps you get, the more comfortable you start getting, the more that your hands can kind of start softening up.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're just kind of getting started, it takes a long time to where everything ain't so rigid.
Yeah.
Because it's going faster and you kind of comprehend. And the more reps you get, especially the what I've seen with when we got to work together out there in California was your ability to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
That was by far as the best that I've ever seen, being able to work with someone you could tell had been coached, and the hand-eye coordination was so spot on.
Mm-hmm.
One little thing we talk about, the next one is you had it handled, whether it was with your left hand, whether it was with your body position, whatever it was. So like, and the fact that you're coachable, like then now you just need reps.
Yeah.
And that's what I started seeing was the more reps you started getting, then all those little things like your hands and your feet and your feel started getting better and better and better within, when you're thinking of a guy that just started roping less than a year and a half, around a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
very rare is it, to be able to get to where you're at now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but yeah, it's a lifetime of being coached, and that's something that I've always done naturally. Like even fighting, I started when I was 27, right? And I had 0 fight experience before that. Let me walk that back. I had like very little when I was, I think 13, I did some kickboxing, but it was not at the level that I needed to be at. It was like, keep Travis busy and go put him in some kickboxing classes kind of a thing. And, something to do like that. And so, but other than that, I started when I was 27 and I've always been able to do that. If it piques my interest and I can put my mind to it, and it's something physical like that, like a sport or anything like that, like I can get pretty good pretty quick.
A lot of people like golf, and because it's hard. There's something to the swing and stuff, and in our industry, team roping compares to golf.
Yeah, it's
because
like cowboy golf.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Because there's no age,
Mm-hmm.
there's no gender, there's no you get to rope in a handicap to where you're roping against guys at the same level. So it's one of them things in our industry that's very appealing, because for some people golf's not quite enough, where this has more moving parts, there's more athleticism, to it and stuff. And so it's been one of them things where I've seen a lot of guys, bull riders, bronc riders, on the rough stock side, that still love to have that adrenaline, love to compete. Like this has been, you can tell where they start picking this up at the end, because you can still keep competing.
Yeah, golf is too slow for me. It's like kind of like baseball. Like baseball to me is too slow, right? And I only play a little bit of Little League, right? I didn't have these pitchers throwing 100 down over the plate, right? And which I can understand is an adrenaline rush, especially when you make contact and you're smacking that ball and you're doing great. Like, hey, good for you. It's just not my thing, But team roping is just like that. It's so much fun. It's just the adrenaline is there, the speed is there. You're being competitive, And like you said, you get a rope with people that are around your level. Now, sometimes that can be a little frustrating, because they're at your level, right? And I miss and they miss. Like, I could put on the sweetest handle and it's just like right in the dirt. And you're just like, oh, dude, like that was my best handle of the day, And it's just like, oh, okay, well, it is what it is, it's. But and I've started to notice there's all these different kind of people in team roping. The people that I do it to have fun, but I want to win. Right. It's kind of like a business in that sense. Like I want to rope with people that I can win with because I like winning. Mm-hmm. But if I'm roping with somebody and we don't win, it doesn't ruin my day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like I don't let it ruin my day. I don't go home and pouty and, I'm not a different man because I missed the steer. Like I was just in Vegas at the Perfect 10 and we were high team back with 15 seconds. All we had to do was 15 seconds. And I missed my steer. And I was like, I was laughing at myself because it was like so infuriating.
Because how many times we put ourselves in that situation at home?
Yeah.
Just got to go knock this one down.
Yeah.
Got to go catch.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, dude, we got this, And I miss them. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I deserve all the shit that people want to give me right now, especially my partner. You know what I mean? And it was like, oh, we missed out on like 20 grand, It's like, son of a gun.
What's funny about those high teamers? That's what, what I'll do so many clinics throughout the year and talk about this one. All right, this is the last one. All right, you're high team back. You got 15 seconds. You got 12 seconds, 17 seconds. You name, you can just go down the line. For your first buckle, your first saddle, 150,000 in Vegas, whatever the goal is, or to beat Billy Jack, butt crack the jackpot, whatever the goal is for this year, right? Yeah. And then now it's like, all right, now can you execute on this last one?
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've seen too is like when I've mentioned, all right, high team back, you can see like a ghost appeared in front of them. Mm-hmm. Because the reason is a lot of times for guys, like when they've been in that high call situation and they missed, it burns your soul. Yeah. It burns deep down inside where then when a guy hears that high team back again, you almost go there. Yeah. And it's hard not to. And what I've told them, like, you've got to practice at home. Yeah. I mean, you do this at home enough times to where you desensitize yourself of being in that situation. So when it does, you're like, finally, I've been practicing this for a month, a year, or whatever. And then now it's time to go execute.
I don't think people will let themselves get put back in that mental space when they're just practicing. It's hard for people to do that. That was something that we had to do in fighting was like a lot of visualization. And we had a coach that would actually walk us through it. So you'd sit there and close your eyes and he would mention everything like step by step, like you're warming up, you hear your name being called, you're walking down the tunnel, your music starts playing, the crowd is either cheering or booing you. You feel the mat under your feet when you walk in. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't want to be back there unless they have to be back there. And so I think a lot of people will shy away from that, even though, people will tell you, hey, you're the high team, all this kind of stuff. I think naturally a lot of times they resist it. But you can't resist it when you're in that situation. That's what kills you. But for me, and this is where I think a lot of people, like I've heard people talking in the back and stuff, and they're like pumping themselves up or like getting nervous, and you can tell it's like getting at them. And you're like, man, you have to understand that, like, this is where you want to be. Mm-hmm. This is why you put in those hours of practice. Like this should be exciting. Mm-hmm. This, like, the nerves just means that you're about to do something great. Yeah. And if you're not ever put in a pressure situation, then you're not good. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You buy the rigs, you buy the horses, you pay them the time. This is the goal. And I think for a lot of guys too, like we talked about, is never put themselves in that situation enough at home. Mm-hmm. The visualization is huge. I can't tell you how many times I've backed in the yellow arena at the NFR before I even got there. Yeah. whether it's on the Cowboy Tour or the Fast Lane or they're on the dummy at home, that visualization of what you talked about is so huge to where, man, you don't want to practice that there at the moment.
Yeah.
Having that mindset of being able to, you've been through this before, because I've seen some guys that, when they get to that high call situation and it ruins them.
Mm-hmm.
You see them in the front or in the bathroom throwing up in the toilet. And then you see some guys that they actually get calmer.
Mm.
Yeah. You see that guys that are, some guys are built for it.
Yeah.
That they almost rope their best one in the short round, the best one when the highest pressured situation is, and so you start seeing a lot of times when, guys are wired for it or if they have the right mental capability of it, whichever one it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and like in that one that I just missed, I was so confident going in there and confident until my rope didn't.
It's amazing how humble the
Yeah.
sport can make you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, one day you're king of the world, and the next day you can't catch.
Clearing too early or clearing too late, and your swing feels like an unfolded lawn chair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what am I doing with my life?
Folks, if you're in Texas or Oklahoma and need a top-tier metal building, you need to call the guys at Cowboy Steel Construction. Founded by Trey Norris back in 2000, Cowboy Steel has grown into one of the premier metal building contractors in the region. Need an indoor arena or want to cover the one you've already got? These guys know how to get the job done right. Strong, reliable, and built to last. Whether it's for ranch, business, or personal use, Cowboy Steel Construction has you covered, literally. Check out their work on social media at Cowboy Steel Construction on their Facebook and Instagram page.
Cowboy Steel Construction. We've got you covered.
This episode is brought to you by BC Insurance of Texas, an agency that's built on family values and deep roots in agriculture. Brandon and his team of agents don't just insure the farm and ranch lifestyle, they live it. That firsthand experience is what drives BC Insurance to do things differently. They don't believe in simply selling policies. Instead, they take the time to build insurance programs that eliminate gaps in coverage and truly protect the land, livestock, equine operations, and assets you've worked a lifetime to build. As an independent agency, BC Insurance partners with top-rated carriers so they can tailor coverage to fit your operation, not force you into a one-size-fits-all plan. Their focus is simple: relationships first, protection second, and peace of mind always. If you're looking for insurance from people who understand your world, visit bcinsurancetx.com and connect with BC Insurance today.
When we'd got done roping, what I had seen was, the more films you started sending, to where, man, you were just getting in a groove, started seeing your spot, started getting more consistent with it. Well, then now talk a little about got two good horses under you. Well, as you talk about moving now to kind of take that next level, talk a little about some of the horses you've tried, and then talk about, because when we were talking, there was something about like, all right, try this one, look for this, but then, all right, let's go to Trevor's at the end. So then that way now this is like what a horse is supposed to feel like. That way you kind of, one of the sayings out here in our industry is, and it's so true, is you never know what a good one is until you rode a good one. So talk a little about, going to Trevor's, trying horses out, and then what was that like?
Yeah. So, I drove down here to Texas. I did Big Loop. I did, Wesley Thorpe and Tyler Wade's, Pro-Am. And then I went down to Hamilton, and then at Hamilton, I was actually able to try one of those horses, the Bay Mare, and they actually let me jackpot on her in the 7. And the owner, the husband, actually roped with me, and I missed his steer, but I caught all my other ones. And so I was like, oh shoot, but I thought she was great, and really reminded me a lot of my buckskin. Just a little bit faster, I would say, out of the box.
Because one of the things I liked about the horse was it stayed on the ground.
Yeah.
His feet kept moving, but she was very flat, but also 15-3.
Yeah.
She's a bigger mare.
Yeah.
you're what, 6'7",
Yeah, I'm
250
6'7".
pounds.
Yeah, 200.
So you're gonna need a
75,
75 now?
but yeah, yeah, a little bigger. Yeah,
Well, when I Googled you this morning, it was 250. So.
yeah.
But when you're thinking about that, a guy's gonna need a bigger animal.
Yeah.
Sometimes what's hard is where you get a bigger animal and it's slower footed.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I've seen that I liked about that mare. Bigger, but moved fast enough, because
Mm-hmm.
that has a lot to do with how fast a lot of times your swing can stay.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so I went. That was like, so I have two other horses. I have my buckskin and my gray, and they're great horses. And I think my gray is actually kind of my sleeper right now. And as I learn to ride better, he's really going to just like, we're gonna grow and go win a bunch. But that bay mare just really reminded me of my buckskin, just a little bit faster, a little bit better, like a little more consistent. She's a little bit older. But and then I go to Trevor's and I'm sitting there and I'm saddling this horse up and I get out there and and I start warming her up and I was like, holy moly. Like, this horse just wants to go. Like, trying to trot her, she's like, wow, just stomping her feet in the ground, and I'm super uncomfortable, and I have Trevor and Miles watching me, and like a couple other people are hanging around watching me, and I'm like, yeah, what's a 3 doing here trying this horse? It's like some of the things going through my mind. You know what I mean? Like, do I really need this? You know what I mean? Like am I just, what am I doing? But then I finally get her into a good lope, and we warm up, and the first steer was a slower steer, and I missed, and I was like, all right, after I felt her leave out of the box, because the videos that I seen that wasn't Trevor riding her, was another lower number guy, and he was holding on to the horn. So I held on to the horn for the first time. And then when she left, I was like, oh, I got this, right? I missed the steer, but
Get the timing of when she leaves.
yeah,
and
it gave me
feel.
confidence,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then after that, I think I roped 4 or 5 in a row, pretty good, and I think same kind of thing. My face wasn't great. I think you even mentioned it, and that was the one that I sent you, where Trevor Kelly's like, hey, on your face, just don't sit back so much, because that's gonna bog their hip down, so they won't be able to really face,
Mm-hmm.
And then so I stood up on the rest of them, and he was like, it's really nice to see. He said the same thing. It's cool when somebody be coached,
Mm-hmm.
like when they're aware of their body and what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing with it in real time, but as soon as I got off that horse, because I had just tried the bay mare, and then I just tried this one, and I called my wife. I was like, oh, babe, I was like, so I'm about to spend some money on these horses. And she's like, okay. I was like, it's some good money. She's like, all right. So I told her, and she's like, well, babe, if this is what's going to make you happy, go do it. I was like, I love you, babe. Go. That's all I needed. I wasn't going to press the action. I wasn't going to do nothing. I wasn't going to try to talk around.
I remember when you called me and you're like, hey, Ron, it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I got my over and under on her.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was like, man.
Well,
So
talk a little about too, like there's one thing. I mean, when a guy's learning how to drive, you don't want a Ferrari first. You want to have something right there that goes slow enough, moves around slow enough where you can get comfortable, get a feel. But then as you're talking about now, as your game's getting higher and higher, talk about now is like drive that Ferrari.
Yeah, so riding that horse, I mean, I just point her towards the box, and she goes in there and turns right around, sticks her butt in there, and is ready. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice. Like, I'm not like fighting her. I'm not having to, move her hips over or move her shoulders over or
I can
nothing.
back up right now, and all of a sudden now just think about roping.
Yeah.
Right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was, I mean, there's levels to it. Absolutely. And that horse really lets me just go. She'll ride up there and rate and do everything she has to do. I mean, I would say and it's not a negative thing, but she scores too damn well because she's used to letting them out. Maybe,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, because like at their level where they're at with the fraternities and helping, they're behind a score.
Yep.
So they're going to have to see, you know, pointing the horn around the end,
Yeah.
neck rope around the end, point
Yeah.
or the shoulder around the end, and sometimes on the slower steer, maybe front leg. Where you're used to going to World Series, you got to go with them. So it's going to take a little while.
Yeah.
But the one thing is, it's so much easier if they've already scored. Then all you got to do now is just keep running them.
Yeah.
Because then once for long, they'll get the feel when the gates go. They're going, and then you're going to start pinging it.
Yeah. So the first steer usually is when I'm late with her, but then after that first steer, she's on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, everything from just when I rope to dally, she's staying there to, okay, now it's time to go. And she just turns that corner nice and smooth.
Like
and
hot knife through butter.
Yeah. It's crazy.
One of the first times I rode Trevor's horses, I forget which one it was. I think it might have been he had one called Quattro that was a gray horse. And when I remember my horses got hurt and I run up there and roped, and as soon as I roped, it was like hot knife through butter where this horse is just stepping out and pedaling. And this steer is just healable right now. And when he went to face, it was like a cartoon. I don't know if you remember that commercial with the little pig that had the propeller and he had his head out the window and he's like, wee! That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could hear myself going, oh my gosh, like I needed a ticket for this ride. This was the coolest feel ever. But just what he had the speed, but the control.
Yeah.
And to where it was just like, man, I'm not on defense at all. Like I'm literally, I can point where I want to go, and then all of a sudden, just wham on the face.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. So what I've noticed with her, so going back to my first horse, Jugs, where he had a lot of that same like energy, but it wasn't pointing in the right direction. It wasn't controlled.
Yeah.
With this horse, you can tell that it was done right because she could have gone when she hit the fork in the road where it was like turned into just a headache or turned into a really good horse. You know, they had her and made her into a really good horse because it's like controlled, not chaos, but that controlled energy that like she gets you there and she faces like I almost flung off because she faced so fast that I wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean? Because I'm used to, you know, the heeler coming down. As soon as she starts to hear that heel rope pull through, she's facing. And I almost came off one time and I was like, oh, wow, this is what it's supposed to be like.
Like I say, it's pretty cool to get on that Ferrari after a while.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I thought was real wise on your part was if you've got one that Trevor and Miles started and they put them through the program, and when that horse is ready to go, that if you get to where maybe you get hung up on your start, or maybe you get hung up in the corner, or maybe you and her get hung up in the face again, you go back there, they get on it, and within one run or two, that horse is back to going back to the foundation of what she knew. But then also too is when you're going to find out now what that little bobble was that created that, to where then they're going to be able to help you right there. Okay, now when you do this, this is where you want to spin around that horn, or whatever the technique is that they're talking about, to where it's going to help improve your riding.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like being able to buy a new vehicle that has warranty. You know, where you have somewhere you knew where it come from, to where, okay, here's where I'm having heck. Those guys are the best in the business. And to be able to have that to where you kind of have a go back to, you know, that's when the guy's going to start really, I think, improving your ride and your horsemanship, to where, because at your level where you being a 3 now, you're going to probably be a 4 by the end of the U.S. finals. You know, next year after that, you're probably a couple years away from being a 5. So to be able to have something you continue to grow on, that's the kind of the path that I like to be able to get people on. Is like, that's great to be able to get to where you're at now, but let's make sure that you're ahead of where you're at now. So that way, when you get to that 4, it's no surprise. You've already kind of been working on it. You're not just stuck at that 3.
Yeah.
Same thing when you're a 4. Okay, now let's evolve here to where you're almost ahead of where you're going. So that way, when you do get bumped up, it's no surprise of where you're at.
Yeah.
That's where I think a lot of times it's skipped on the horsemanship.
Well, that's always my plan. That's always my plan. And the greatest thing about having that horse too is it's helped me with my other horses. So I have 4 horses now, and I don't have to like try to rope on them as much as possible to get the runs in for me to work on my roping, because I can kind of break it up amongst all 4. So like, for instance, I was telling you on my gray horse, this last trip that I qualified in Hamilton on him. Well, for whatever reason, during that trip, me and him just like after that, or even before that, I was like kind of having a hard time with him. After that, it got a little worse. But then since I've gotten the other horses, me and him have gotten 100 times better, which is, I can't explain it to you. Maybe it's some of my riding because I'm on the two mares that are really good. And so they've helped me. And I know that I'm riding him better, and my buckskin too. Like my roping in general has gotten a lot better since getting those 2 extra horses. Because I've just been able to work on my roping. And now when I'm in the moment, I'm not worried so much about my roping, but I'm focused on riding my horse the way that I need to ride him.
Because once
And
you
everything
get enough
slows
loops,
down a little bit.
well, and also too, once you get enough loops and you get to where that horse can put you in a consistent spot and you know where them horns are consistently, you'll be amazed at like how much more, once you focus on getting that same spot, your right hand will just know what to do because it knows where the horns are. And that's reps. But man, when a good horse puts you in that same spot, then it's amazing how much easier the horns stay in place when it's easier to rope.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. So man, I'm excited. Yeah, we're gonna rope in 11. Excited about that. I ain't healed in a minute. I didn't tell you that when I told you that I'd rope. But yeah, we've been practicing. Jackie's been turning me some steers, and so I'm pumped to get to go rope with you. But
over $380,000 in lifetime earnings and 5 open futurity championships. New One Time Blues has proven himself at the highest levels of competition, and now he's passing that greatness on. His foals are eligible for every major incentive program, giving you every opportunity to compete for the money that matters. Unmatched genetics, championship pedigree, foals with size built to win. New One Time Blues. This is what you breed for.
Man, it's just cool to see, guys that come into the industry, especially from fighting and especially from other, businesses or other sports and stuff like that. But then just to see too is like when guys are so coachable, that hand-eye coordination, it's fun to see like how far you're going to go in roping, because it's going to be, especially getting on the good ones, getting on the good horses. And so I'm excited to see you rope this week. It's going to be fun. Yeah,
I'm excited to rope.
We'll talk a little about, let's start talking about fighting, because I'm really, it's been cool to see your story, because I know when you and I talked out there in California, it was wild to me. I didn't know you didn't start fighting until you're 27. Like that was wild to see how good of a career you had at a late start. Where did you start fighting? When did you start fighting? And also, where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm from Hawaii originally. Moved to the mainland when I was young. But no matter what, I'm always the boy from Hawaii, right? So when I was maybe 26-ish, I started doing some jiu-jitsu, and then that just kind of naturally led me into MMA. The guy showed up to the gym, wanted a sparring partner. They were like, "You, the biggest guy in the gym, come get beat up," And I ended up holding my own and doing pretty well. So the coach,
because growing up, you played sports a lot, right?
Yeah, I just played basketball. That was my main sport, was basketball.
Because then after sports, wasn't you was construction and just blue collar?
I was painting houses, or it's funny. That's like maybe about a 7-year kind of shelf life in an industry, it seems like. But I was like painting for a while, and then training dogs, and I was still young enough to where I didn't want to give up on like a athlete dream, the dream of being an athlete. And when I was in my early 20s, I was like, man, I should go out and try to play like a tight end or something. And there's just no feeder system for, at that age, I'm old for, trying to go play professional football. So then I actually just started doing jiu-jitsu because I wanted to. I had my my oldest son at the time. I think my younger son was still on the way, but I started doing jiu-jitsu so I can. And I just wanted to get my black belt, and so I could show my kids that you're an athlete. Like don't let my shortcomings dictate your life. Like I had offers to go overseas and play basketball. School wasn't for me. Otherwise, I would have been in probably a bigger college. But it just didn't turn out right. So I was kind of disappointed in myself for that. So I started doing jiu-jitsu, wanted to get my black belt, and then just kind of morphed into MMA. And, I was fighting in casino parking lots, in the smaller shows and
So obviously it just kind of came natural for you.
yeah, kind of, I mean, a lot like roping has, I've gotten fairly good pretty quick. I would say that I got better at fighting quicker because there's just so much to it, with team roping, but, yeah, it just came quick. And I started working my way up. I think in a year I had 9 fights. And then I got signed to the UFC pretty much in a year from fighting professionally.
Now, we talked about that. You were getting a lot of notice from Hawaii, correct? Because I thought, didn't you say something about when you came, like you had a pretty big following?
That was kind of later in so being from Hawaii, I've always, doesn't matter how old I was or anything. I've always been from Hawaii, right? And and so I've always carried that with me in everything I've done. So in fighting, I was the same way. Even though I was training in Southern California, I am from Hawaii.
So how did you get the nickname Hapa?
So growing up, actually, it was kind of used as like a derogatory way because it's actually comes from Japanese language because you're only half, right? So you're only like half Hawaiian, so you're not full blood. And so I decided to take that as like, you know what, I am Hapa, like that's me. I'm half. I'm crossbred. You know what I mean? And so I just kind of I just took it and ran with it. I think there's a band out there called Hapa and stuff like that, but that's like some buddies of mine try to come up with like fighting nicknames for me, and I was just like these all sound kind of like they're not me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny, when I first met Jackie, I was talking to her and talking about where she's from. She's like, well, I'm originally from Illinois, and I've got family from Arkansas and Missouri. And she started rattling all this stuff off. She's like, honestly, I would be worth more grade. That's like when you don't have papers as a horse. She's like, I'd be worth more there. And it was one of the funniest one-liners I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
But like, say, owned it. Like, this is where I'm from.
Yeah. And so I decided to own it, And really what people would call them Hapa Haulis, because that means they're half white in Hawaii. So I just took it and ran with it.
So that was your nickname as you started fighting?
Hapa, yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a little bit in, like 6 months in, and, people tried different things. My buddy tried a couple, like the Hawaiian assassin and stuff like that. And I was like, so do I assassinate Hawaiians, or am I a Hawaiian that assassinates?
Just nothing that felt like it fit.
Yeah, what I mean? I was like, that's not me, you know? And so Hapa it stuck, and that's.
So you started getting in fights, whether it was in the parking lots, whether it was, like the fights, they were kind of, some underground fights were basically parking lots of certain things.
Oh, I wouldn't say that they're underground. They're just the smaller shows. Yeah. So they weren't like illegal or anything like that. They there would be a production behind it,
Gotcha.
a small production, but a production behind it, and you'd literally be fighting in a parking lot in a casino like Saboba or Paula, I think was another one. But yeah, that it was just like, yeah, you're warming up on asphalt, you know what I mean? And it's like, was that my first, yeah, my first pro fight, actually was in TJ, and I was, it was like, so like kind of rinky-dink, right? No blood tests, no nothing like that. And it all hit me after the fight because I smashed this dude. And I remember telling my manager at the time, I was like, okay, I don't mind. I said, yeah, like, let's book me a fight, but no Polynesians. Like, I don't want to fight a Polynesian dude because I know how tough they are. So he goes, okay, well, you're going to fight this guy, Evan Langford. I was like, that doesn't sound Polynesian. Sounds good. So I get to the weigh-ins. It's really funny. I get to the weigh-ins and I see him. I'm like chopping it up with them, and because when for Polynesian people, like when you see another Poly, like, hey, how's that? Or just kind of, you just start chatting with them. And I was like, oh, like, who you fighting? He's like, oh, you. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you're Evan? He's like, yep. I'm like, oh. Dude, this guy was like 280 pounds, big old head, just the
talk a little bit
thick
about
skulled Samoan guy.
Well, when you're talking about all the weight divisions,
yeah,
they're within however many pounds, right? And then, but when we're talking about the heavyweights, it's like a wide gap, right?
Yeah, yeah, and even then, I mean, at this fight, I think he was over 265, but at that level, it doesn't really matter. Like, do you want to fight or not? Like, are you gonna pull out of the fight because like at this level? No.
Yeah.
At the UFC, I get it. Heavyweights have to weigh 265 for it to be a sanctioned fight and all that. But at that smaller level, it's hard to find fights for heavyweights. Can't tell you how many people pulled out of fighting me in the smaller shows. But yeah, so I show up and it's him. I'm like, son of a bitch. So I go out. Anyways, I beat him pretty good. But at the end of the fight, I have all this blood on me and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I didn't take a blood test. You know what I mean? And so neither did he. So I'm like sitting there trying to end TJ out of a bucket of water. I'm trying to rinse myself off to like get back over the border. Because I was at the time where they're like, hanging people off bridges when the cartel is really.
So we're
like,
TJ. Is that in Mexico?
Tijuana, Mexico.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
TJ,
Got
Mexico. So I had to cross the border to fight. When we're going to the arena, we had our bags up against the windows in the taxis so nobody would see that it was like,
got it,
foreigners coming in, But yeah, and then after that, I just went on a string of fights and won 9 of my fights, and then a year later I signed to the UFC. And then I fought my first fight in the UFC in June. And
so it's the same thing, kind of like your open. It just took off.
Just took off.
And then
3
sure, you got probably a good trainer.
Yep.
Probably was starting to get the techniques down.
Absolutely.
Looks like you're getting. So when I watched the front kick you did on, what was it, Overstein?
Alistair Overeem.
Yeah, Overeem. And yeah, and then the Superman punch. Like you had some stuff that like rocked some guys at the highest level. It was cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? I a year of fighting outside the UFC signed me. They put me against guys to lose. I think they were, because I didn't have a name before it. I was nobody coming off the street, and it was just and so I started my wins started speaking for themselves. But yeah, 3 years after my first fight, or actually about 2.5 years after my first fight, I'm getting to be ranked 3rd in the world. You know what I mean? So
in the heavyweight division.
In the heavyweight division,
which is,
when it was like, it was like death row walking down in that division. You had some solid fighters back in those days. So not saying that they aren't now, but it's a little bit thinned out now. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's kind of how it goes for me. I put my mind to something, like I was saying, and I pick it up fairly quick, and I put myself in situations that I think most people wouldn't put themselves in, but that's what helps me grow.
What was probably your most memorable fight? What was your most memorable experience in the UFC?
Man,
It's a Superman punch, man. That one was.
yeah. Well, that was my
rock star.
That was like I'm here. You know, that was like
it's a good presence.
Yeah, that was like a notice to like the heavyweight division that like you need to start watching me, kind of a thing. So that's kind of what started it all. You know, was that fight. Before that, I had I think that was my third fight in the UFC. But the first fight, I finished the guy in the first round. My second fight, I went to a decision, and it ended up being a draw. The guy was, I mean, I should have done better, but he was holding my shorts the entire fight, you know, and it was just, I rocked him and wobbled him pretty good, and he knew that he was going to go down, so he started holding my shorts, you know. And then they put me on ice for like 10 months after that because the fight was so boring, right? They're like, we're not paying you to put on boring fights. So they put me on ice for like 10 months, and it pissed me off. And so I went into that fight against Stefan Struve like, I don't care how big you are.
That was against
that
the
was
Superman
a Superman punch. Yeah,
That
he's like a
badass.
7-footer, and so
because he was taller than you too, right?
Yeah, he's 7 feet. Yeah, 7-footer. So yeah, I knocked him out, and that was kind of my that was a really cool experience. I remember because it's like I was on Sports Center. You know what I mean? I was like I think like top 3 plays or something like that, or whatever for the week, or you know, something like that. And that was kind of cool, you know. But I think the thing that happens, I feel like when you start really getting into your industry, is that like it's hard to enjoy the moment because there's this goal that you're trying to achieve. And so for me, like I learned from that in fighting. And I'm not saying I'm going to go out and like compete in the NFR and do all that kind of stuff, but I want to get good at roping, as good as I can get. And who knows, you know, but it's like I'm enjoying the moment. Every moment I get to enjoy now. That's where I'm at in my life, like with my kids, with my family, with my wife, with roping. I just get to be present and be in the moment and enjoy the ride.
Because when I look back at your career, it was 18 wins and then 14 of them were knockouts. So
yeah,
I would say that, you started making it a lot more exciting to watch.
Yeah.
It would look like. And it was fun. I went over your highlight reel this morning. I was taking Creed to school and we were watching all the fights on YouTube and stuff. And so, yeah, it was fun to watch. But, and then talk about too, when, through fighting, able to meet Rhonda. We obviously know probably how you met through fighting, but then, how did you guys meet throughout as your guys' career was evolving?
Yeah, so I went and started training at gym in LA, and that's where her and I were just training at the same gym. It wasn't anything. Wasn't like I went there for her or anything like that. The coach that was there was really good at like working with your footwork and boxing skills, and that's what I kind of needed at the time. So that's why I wanted to go to that gym. A buddy of mine, Clay Guida, had gone there, and then another guy, Jake Ellenberger, went there, and I noticed their hands getting a lot better, and so I wanted to follow suit. And so I was there, and we're, I guess you can say, teammates, because we're training at the same gym for about a year and a half before anything ever like started, right? Because it was like I had mutual respect for her, she had mutual respect for me. It wasn't like that at all. And then just like I was going through some personal stuff, and I think she was going through some personal stuff too, and it just happened. And we started talking, and now what's it been, 11 years later, we're happily married, in love with 2 kids.
Something too about having so much in common. it's going to be rare to where two people at your guys' level would understand what it's like doing what you do. That's kind of the attraction between Jackie and I, was there was so much that we understood about each other, understood what each other were doing, understood what pressure it was like to be in the certain situations we were in, where that is a common ground a lot of people can have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what the other person's going through, so how to not be in the way. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people that don't understand an industry, like your significant other, that doesn't understand the industry, that isn't in the industry, maybe they're just a fan of the industry, they still don't understand what it takes to be there, to be in one of those top spots. And so a lot of times they don't mean to, but they get in the way. And that is the thing that I think causes the most trouble for couples. And instead of like having that level of trust and understanding, they're like, well, like they take it a whole different route, and then they think the other person's being selfish, when it's like, well, this is what I got to do. Like, this is how I got here. This is what I have to do. You can't expect me to change everything about me when I'm sitting here at the top of my game. Like you got to get out of my way a little bit. Let me work here, and that's what I think, like, I do for Rhonda. I'm in full support of Rhonda, whatever she wants to do. And she's in full support of me and whatever I want to do. Hence the phone call that I made to her about these two horses. She's like, yeah, babe, go ahead. That's all I needed. And I have them in my barn. So,
well, I never really said her full name. So does anyone lives under a rock? You married Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
One of the, I would say what she did in UFC fighting for females is very, it's not the same, but in a small sense, it's the same, because what Jackie helped do in the breakaway was helped evolve it and put it on a track to get it to where it's at now. What the way Rhonda fights, the way she promotes, I mean, she built so much of women's fighting in the UFC, which was, I mean, she was a trendsetter.
Well, she didn't build most of it; she built all of it. Yeah, I mean, she is why they are in there, and I'm incredibly proud of her for that. It's something that nobody could ever take away from her.
Yeah,
whether you want to talk about it or not, she's the reason those women are in there. Yeah, I mean,
well, I think we're seeing it now too, with how long, because once she retired, went to the WWE, went down that route for a little bit. Well, then now we're talking about now their next fight, and you're seeing how good she can promote again.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's rock star. With what she's doing now with the fight. It's May 16th. It's going to be on Netflix. It's there in the Intuit Dome there in Inglewood, California. She's fighting Gina Carano. So this is hyped. This is what she knows how to do. And,
absolutely.
We've seen her on the podcast. We've seen her out there promoting it. And I mean, it's gonna.
Yeah, she's on
my
fire.
Wife and I, because my wife had her cutout up here in the gym. My wife was rock star. I mean, she was all in watching her, and so it's gotten both of us excited again to see the comeback and what she's done to be able to promote it, to give everyone kind of that hair on the back of your neck standing up again. She does that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm really, like, I get to have that insider look, right, and know how long she's been working on this for, and everything that she's had to sacrifice to get to this point, and all the hard work that she's put in to get here. I'm just glad I get to be a part of it in that sense. And watch her go do her thing, seeing the smile on her face, seeing her do something that she's incredibly good at, and enjoying the moment. That's where she's at as well. I think we're both kind of at that point in our life where we're not extremely worried about the outcome. We want to enjoy the ride. And she is back to enjoying the ride with this fight. And that's what's going to make her ultimately the most dangerous, is that she's having fun again. You know, like we had just started talking, like when you're in it, you kind of lose that because you have this goal that you want to get to. But now with Rhonda, she's enjoying the ride, having fun doing it, looks amazing. She's in fight shape, ready right now. She'd go fight tonight. And right now it's just, it's all green.
Well, I'll bet
Time
that
to go.
first go round, you know, there was a lot of whirlwind, it seemed like, because where she was taking it, the notoriety, acting, sponsors, you know, we've seen that a lot too with when an athlete hits a certain spot. I mean, it's just a whirlwind of all the things you're keeping up with, you know, and trying to fight, you know, to where now it looks like you say, it's so much easier once you've been through that. Now to be able to come back where she's at, having that presence to where now you kind of know, okay, I know how to win, I know how to promote, but then almost not as much of that whirlwind where it seems like some focus could be a little easier too, because that was a lot she was going through at first.
Yeah, it was a lot, but now, you know, we have the variables of having kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is a whole different thing. And so in some aspects, you know, it's easier, and in other aspects it's harder.
Yeah.
It's a lot
That
harder
makes
for her to
sense too,
get
yeah.
like full rest, because the girls are like, mom. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm beat up right now. I just want to lay down, you know? And they're relentless. And so, you know, and that's why they're here with me on this trip, is to give mom the time to
Focus,
do what she needs to do, you know, and go train and, you know, be around the people that you need to be around to succeed. And, you know, I'll take over right now. And that's what we do.
What was one of the things you felt like that helped kind of push this fight along with where it's at? Because also too, being on Netflix kind of went another route too, where like you can tell she's thinking outside the box. She's taking this to another level again.
Yeah.
What was kind of the reason for this fight?
Well, Hunter Campbell pissed her off at the UFC. We love Dana. We're cool with Dana, and you know, we're in his office before, but the guy that is doing some of the negotiating pissed Ronda off, and he's learning now that you don't want to do that. I can almost see Dana just like, oh, why'd you say that? You know what I mean? Like,
because he knows her.
Yeah, because he knows, like, you know what I mean? Just like there's ways to speak to somebody like Rhonda to get to try to get your point across, right? But if you are disrespectful for a split second, she will call you out.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing right now. And so, you know, MVP and Netflix picked it up, and I mean, she's freaking killing it, dude.
Yeah, she's gonna take it to another level again.
She's showing you why she was able to get the women into the UFC. When have you seen that since she retired? You haven't. Not in the women's divisions in the UFC. They don't know how to promote. I'm not saying I do. You know what I mean? I wasn't great at promoting. She had to promote to get fights. I didn't have to do that. That's something, you know, very few of the men know how to do. Connor's one of them.
I would agree because there's certain hunger, because, you know, you're fighting from the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting it. Like, that's what I've seen with Jackie, where she, you know, they were just amateur rodeos, you know, and if you're a breakaway roper in our industry, you know, I think it's been less than 10 years ago. Once you went through college, that's it. You get to go to the amateur rodeos, you go to college, hopefully you get a job. And then when you're done with college, you go get that job and you can amateur rodeo on the weekends. That was all they had. Well, when it started, it's kind of starting getting a little bit in the pro rodeos, a little bit. Well, she was one of the drivers that was out there pushing for it, talking to the committees, talking and promoting it every chance she got. You know, where then now you're seeing the PBRs picking it up, and, you know, now you're seeing where New Orleans last week, I don't know if you've seen that, but gosh, it was just what the Hondo has done for the top level athletes. And they all pick up the breakaway ropers. and we're still not even seeing it at the very top level in the PRCA, at the NFR and the finals. And so, where she's done in promoting and for her industry, super proud of what she's done in her career. Same with what you're talking, this weekend she's getting inducted into the Texas Hall of Fame, and, proud of just what she's done. Cause I mean, that girl, what I would say, Jackie, in our business has got that eye of the tiger. She has that ability to promote and fight for what she's doing, and the work ethic like no one I've ever seen. And it's cool to see, where, like, that's what, when I went to go do that clinic with you and I got to meet Rhonda, that's the most jealous Jackie has ever been since we've been married. She's like, that I should have been meeting her, because she's gotten so much. Cause she's read her book. She felt like there was such a connection with her for what she fought for and what Jackie's trying to fight for as well. And it's cool to see. It's cool to see what they both done.
For sure.
Two proud dudes right here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Team Ropers, just a quick note. My 2026 clinic schedule is available now at charlycrawford.training. You can find all up-and-coming dates and locations listed under the Clinics tab. If you'd like more information or want to apply to host, the host form is available on the website under the Clinics tab as well. Again, that's charlycrawford.training for the full clinic schedule and hosting information. For any questions, email me at charlycrawfordtraining@gmail.com.
So, man, I'm looking forward to the fight. May 16th. Everyone be checking it out on Netflix, and it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, Rousey versus Carano.
Nice, man.
Be a good one.
Nice. I'm looking forward to this weekend watching the US finals too. So
yeah. I mean, I'm feeling confident. I've been roping really well, so
gonna do good, man. With the horses you got and just the drive you have to just not be scared. And I think too is what you're gonna start finding too is, when you start going to these good ropings, U.S. finals is a good production. The BFI is good productions. Starting to find some of them ropings where you're going to where, just the barriers, you're getting comfortable of what that feel is, because they're all about the same. Those well-run, big money, short rounds that's got high energy. These are fun ropings to start getting go to now. So.
Yeah. Well, that was my first winner in Wickenburg was this last winter. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah. And so you start to see, at like Rancho Rio and stuff like that, how some of these places are ran with multiple arenas and all that kind of good stuff. And it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, because that Rancho Rio runs a tight ship. I mean, they have it down to the second on the arena.
Absolutely.
How they run it, you're seeing good productions. Ty Yost, all those guys that know how to put on the good ones. And once you get to enough of those, then you kind of know which ones to go to and how to get ready for them. Because there's a lot to just getting and going. Get going to them, seeing what they're like, seeing what the cattle are like, seeing what the feel of what the setup is like. So in that way, 365 days later, when you need to go back there again, you start getting confident of what that feel like, what the start was like, when the steers are in the certain spot where you're ahead of it. So when you rate, there's your shot. All those little things like that is to where then, your roping's just going to keep getting better and better. So.
Yeah, when I was out in Arizona, when I would come back to Southern California, I felt way more confident because in Arizona, the boxes are way deeper. And so you're like 2 or 3 strides before you pick your rope up. Where in Southern California, the boxes are a lot more shallow. So as soon as you nod, you're kind of swinging your rope. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because you can catch them right there.
Yeah, it's a different feel.
Yeah, and it was a little more difficult for me to adjust to. But once I got it, then I kind of started placing.
Yeah, because that's one of the reasons. Like I'll show you too when we leave here. But one of the reasons why I set my boxes up the way I do, I can make my boxes wide or as deep as any box. If it's up to 22 feet. So that's pretty much going to be able to give you the same feel because there's so much timing to when you go with the same, as if you go to the World Series finals and it's 22 foot. Well, if you've been practicing that all week long, by the time you get there, that feel's there.
Absolutely.
But if you're in a 15-foot box, that 7 feet is huge on when and where you're catching up. So that's going to throw you off where the big money is. So my whole deal is like when we rope the NFR, I'll show you our other arena where Jackie ropes. It's the same measurements from the box and the width as the NFR. So when we'd practice right there where everything's the same. Now the arena's longer, so if we needed to free our horses up, but the dimensions of where the steer's going to be and where the left wall is. We practice that all the time.
Yeah.
So that when we got there, nothing changed except for the fact it was a little bit brighter.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much to that. So, well, man, I wish nothing but best of luck. And man, and thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Anytime, man.
Right
Appreciate
on.
it.
Do good this week.
Yep. You got it.